Okay, so Jesus, he had a constant companion in his ministry, Mary Magdalene. See, according to this gospel, she just wasn't a tag-along, but his closest disciple. The Gospel of Philip says, and the companion of the Savior was Mary Magdalene. Christ loved her more than all the disciples and used to kiss her often on her mouth. Yeah, you heard that right. Jesus, the Savior, playing favorites with Mary M, kissing her on the mouth in front of everyone. It flat out names Magdalene as Jesus's companion. Now that might not seem like a big deal, but the Greek word used here is koinonos, meaning companion or partner or wife. So many people read that line from the Gospel of Philip and immediately jump to the conclusion that Jesus was literally married. Could Jesus have been married? Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. We don't know. But when we focus on literal marriage, we miss a far deeper truth that's hidden in these words. Because this isn't about romance or just a physical relationship. It's about bringing together feminine wisdom, intuition, creativity, and nurturing within oneself. And if that doesn't shock you, you might not grasp how utterly banned this idea was and still is in mainstream Christian circles. And the other disciples were shocked too. They asked Jesus, "Why do you love her more than all of us?" The Savior said to them in reply, "Why don't I love you like her? When a person who's blind and one who sees are both in the dark, they're no different from one another. When the light comes, the one who sees will see the light, and the one who's blind will remain in the dark." Jesus was saying that they're spiritually blind, but Mary has the eyes to see. All right, so let's decode this message here. The kiss between Jesus and Mary is symbolic of sharing breath, and breath to them meant spirit. The word for spirit in Greek is pneuma, also meaning breath. In other words, a kiss is a metaphor for exchanging the breath of life and knowledge. So when Jesus kisses Mary, it signifies a divine union of soul and spirit, not just lips. Jesus and Mary are the archetypal bride and groom of the bridal chamber, and that represents the energies within us all coming together. But the Gospel of Philip drives this home even further. It says, "There were three who traveled with the Lord all the time, his mother Mary, her sister, and Magdalene, who is called his companion, because Mary is his sister, his mother, and his partner." So this passage mentions three Marys who are always with Jesus: his mother Mary, the sister Mary, and Mary Magdalene, the partner. And these three Marys, they represent different faces of the divine feminine. Triple Mary. How mystical is that? Mother, sister, companion, all in one. So this isn't just a coincidence, it's symbolic as hell. It's like saying Mary wasn't just one role, but had all these multiple aspects of the divine feminine. She was mother, nurturer, wisdom, sister, equal, friend, and companion, lover, bride, co-creator. And get this trio of Marys is very similar to the spiritual idea of the triple goddess. If you're not familiar with this concept, it represents three main stages of feminine energy and wisdom: the maiden, which symbolizes youth and new beginnings; the mother, which represents nurturing, protection, and compassion; and the crone, which is about wisdom, maturity, and transformation. So the three Marys aren't exactly the same as this, but it's very similar. And when it says they were always with Jesus, it means that he was fully integrated with these feminine qualities all the time. This was pretty radical and revolutionary, especially in a culture dominated by rigid ideas about gender and spirituality. So how does all this tie into the bridal chamber? Well, in Valentinian symbolism, Jesus is the bridegroom, Mary is the bride, and their kiss and special relationship is an allegory of the reunion. When we remain spiritually blind, walling off our feminine spirit or masculine soul, regardless of our gender, the Archons can jerk us around easily. We're like incomplete circuits that they can hack. To break free, you have to marry the Mary and Jesus within yourself. So what does this mean for us right now? We've identified the problem. Archons keeping us ignorant and divided, and we've identified the solution. Unify within yourself, the bridal chamber, and attain knowledge of the truth, gnosis. How the hell do we do that? And what does it feel like? What happens when you enter this sacred union? If anyone becomes a child of the bridal chamber, they'll receive the light. This isn't some empty promise, it's spiritual technology. Reclaiming your power means diving into what traditional religion told you to avoid. The Gospel of Philip boldly redeems the forbidden tree from the Genesis story, telling us this isn't something to fear, but rather a source of awakening. The tree of knowledge is the place where all eat everything. It killed Adam, but here it makes humanity live. So in Genesis, eating from the tree brought death and exile, all that crap, but the Gospel of Philip says that this same knowledge embraced consciously awakens humanity. In other words, knowledge isn't sinful. painful, it becomes your path to freedom. Doesn't that make a lot more sense? This breaks the Archons' illusion and spiritual prison of ignorance. All right, so we've talked about the bridal chamber and this whole unification of opposites thing a lot. Okay, cool story, but how do we actually do it? Like, practically speaking, how do we move from this abstract symbolism into real-world transformation? Well, to really grasp this, we can turn to the groundbreaking work of the psychologist Carl Jung. Jung introduced concepts like the anima and animus, which refers to the inner feminine within men and the inner masculine within women, essentially your internal opposite that has to be acknowledged, embraced, and integrated for you to become whole. All right, but let's be real here. While Jung's anima and animus ideas were revolutionary, today they're also a bit outdated because they rely heavily on this gender binary framework. Instead, you can think about this internal counterpart as your mirror self, which is just the complementary opposite within your psyche. And this applies regardless of whatever gender you identify with. But integration doesn't just stop there, because Jung also introduced the idea of the shadow self. The shadow self is all the parts of you that you repress, hide, or reject. Your insecurities and fears, dark desires, everything your conscious mind doesn't want to face. But Jung made it really clear, ignoring your shadow does not make it go away. Instead, it takes control of your life from behind the scenes. Carl Jung said, "The shadow is a living part of the personality and therefore wants to live with it in some form. It cannot be argued out of existence or rationalized into harmlessness." Doesn't that sound a lot like those dark evil spirits that go into the individuals who haven't become united? Now, here's how Philip brilliantly captures this psychological truth. As long as the root of evil is hidden, it is strong. But if it's recognized, it dissolves, and if it's revealed, it dies. Philip and Jung are saying very similar things here. Darkness, your shadow, whatever you want to call it, is only powerful as long as it stays hidden and unconscious. But once you shine the light of awareness onto it, it loses its grip. Think about how crazy it is that the Gospel of Philip was basically teaching depth psychology 2,000 years ahead of schedule. Philip even describes vividly what happens if we don't acknowledge this shadow. It'll be uprooted if we recognize it. But if we don't recognize it, it takes root within us and bears its fruit in us. It masters us and we're forced to serve it. It captures us so that we do what we do not want to do and we do not do what we want to. And Carl Jung echoed this almost exactly when he famously said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Think about how many times you felt trapped in behaviors or patterns that you know aren't healthy. Self-sabotaging relationships, anxieties, destructive habits, those are not random occurrences. That's your shadow running your life because you haven't integrated it. The bridal chamber in modern psychological terms is about doing exactly this kind of inner work, confronting your shadow, integrating your mirror self, the anima animus, and moving toward what Jung called individuation, which is the process of becoming a fully united, self-aware individual. It's called individuation because you're no longer divided, you're unified. And once you've done this integration, you've effectively closed the door on archonic manipulation. All right, so now you know that the invisible soul sucker is archonic ignorance and manipulation, and the secret weapon to stop it is through knowledge and integration. And the bridal chamber ritual is that dramatic representation of that process. In short, the Archons game completely falls apart when you truly know who you are, a whole divine human being. Remember, the Archons or evil spirits or whatever you want to call them, they're not literal monsters lurking out there. They're the shadows hiding within your own psyche. This is all happening right now inside your mind. It's a metaphor. The cosmic battle between Christ and the Archons is the internal battle between your higher self and your doubts, ignorance, insecurities, fears, and all the rest. The ultimate message here isn't about worshiping Christ, it's about becoming Christ, and the Gospel of Philip makes it crystal clear why bowing to an external God is so misguided. Humans make gods and worship their creation. It would be better for the gods to worship humans. Philip's blunt point: worshipping an external false god that some religion made up is totally backward. It places you beneath, surrendering your own divine birthright. So don't bow to external illusions. Stand tall and recognize that the divine power you seek outside is actually inside. This is exactly what becoming Christ means. The Gnostics saw the God of the Bible as the villain because he's the ultimate trap. Because when you believe that God is out there instead of in here, You build a prison in your own mind. This is world-shaking information. If you take it seriously, it means each of us has the power to stage a jailbreak from the cosmic prison. And the Gnostics are handing us the keys to the kingdom that's hidden in our own consciousness. So where do we go from here? Well, that's up to you. So you've peeked behind the curtain. You've heard that you're far more powerful than just a human, and that you're actually a spark of the infinite, capable of awakening and becoming divine. So the Archons, they're gonna double down on distractions and doubts to make you forget everything you just heard. They thrive on you shrugging this off as just another YouTube crazy rant, blasphemy, heresy. So are you gonna let them, or will you dare to break free and become a Christ? Because I'll let you in on a secret. The second coming of Christ, that's happening right now in all of us as we realize we're divine.